Hello again, Leica fans and Leica fam. We have another great Leica Conversations program for you today. My name is Antonio Di Benedetto, product specialist for Leica Camera USA. Thank you so much for joining us here again with another great program, another inspirational talk. We are so happy for you to take the time out of your busy schedules to be with us. And I am joined today also by my co-host, Kieran Garnani, marketing director for Leica Camera USA. And we have another great program we're so happy to bring you. Kieran, thanks for being here with me today.
Thank you. Welcome all.
Let's bring on our guest, Mr. Randy Blythe, who is not only the lead singer of the Grammy-nominated and amazing touring for over decades, the band Lamb of God that has seen all ends of this earth and screamed in just about any and all of them. But he is also an amazingly prolific writer and an accomplished photographer. So we're here today to talk about his work, see some images from him. He is so prolific where he photographs all over the world on his touring. Now, of course, that's a little bit different these days with COVID, but we'll get some of his perspective and see why his camera is so important to telling his visual voice. So without further ado, I'd love to bring on Randy Blythe to be with us today.
How is everybody? Thanks everybody
Great.
for coming in. I saw people coming in from all over the world, South Africa even. So it's nice to be here with everyone.
Yeah, Randy, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And I'm sure you've got plenty of fans here in the chat. Everyone say hi. But we are so happy also that you are here to also share some of your storytelling and some of your photography with us. So again, thank you. Before we jump in, I'd like to ask a question and then lead off our first image.
Sure.
Well, first question would be, Randy, you use Leica cameras and a variety of them. How did you get into it, and how do they, help you tell your story? And I'm going to also then lead off with an impactful first image.
Right. Well, I first started when I became a photographer by accident. I bought a camera to do video with, and one day I just put it on automatic dummy mode and took a picture of my coffee pot, and I was like, I'm a genius, right? But entirely average photo, but the bug hit me, and I'm never, after that, I never really went anywhere without a camera. And then, I started learning about how to control an exposure manually. And I started researching photographers. I was like, I need to, like anything, if I'm going to learn something, I want to look at the people who do it really well before me. And through that, I discovered the work of Henri Cartier-Bresson. And I started looking up what he used, which of course was a Leica M. And I then started reaching out to different people because they're not like the common camera you see at rock shows or whatever. Not many rock photographers who are a lot of people who I learned my early photography skills from because they're available to me. You don't see a lot of these Leica M's, and the more I looked at these images by Cartier-Bresson and other people, I noticed there's just certain look to it that's hard to explain. And good photography is not gear dependent, obviously, but it was super, I was super impressed by the quality of his images. So a friend of mine who's a music photographer out in Los Angeles, Andrew Stewart, shout out Andrew, Stewie. You guys know him and love him. One day I was
fantastic.
Great guy. He found out that I was shooting with my friend Scott Uchida. I was actually shooting Slash and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses over at a rehearsal space in LA one day just for fun. And Andrew's like, I'll come out and bring my Leica. And he had also put me in contact with Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, who of course shoots Leica. And we had started having discussions. But Andrew's like, I'll bring it out and you can try it out. You should see if it's, something for you, because it's a different experience shooting with these cameras. And he brought the M out, and I shot Slash and Duff McKagan from Guns N' Roses. Those are my first Leica shots ever. And I was like, okay, not a bad first day, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, I have to have one of these. At this point, it just was instantaneous. There's something about the feel of the rangefinder and focusing it, seeing the parallax come together. And when I looked at the files on my computer, I was zooming in. I remember on Slash's face, and I was like, I can see inside his pores. This is insane. The glass on these lenses are insane. So from then, it's just I mostly shoot with an M, a couple of different M's, both M10, M10P, and the M10 monochrome. And I shoot with the Q though too. That's my go-to camera. Go out the door, and I've shot stuff with the SL before.
And you've used all these cameras, and I know like M's are kind of
Oh,
your
and the
wheelhouse.
Deluxe, and the Deluxe.
Hey, the
Yeah,
Deluxe is a good camera too.
Deluxe Type 109, which I gifted to a friend of mine in New York.
So you use all these cameras. You have, correct me if I'm wrong, you have a camera with you almost all the time, everywhere you go.
I don't go to the grocery store without a camera.
So okay, that brings us back then to this lead image, which was the image, the headline image for our program. You travel all over, you toured all over, and since, as we established, even in the grocery store, you have the camera with you. Tell us about this image to kick off our slideshow of your work.
Yes, that was on tour here in the States. I've toured with my band Lamb of God and played on every single continent except for Antarctica. That's because there's no one to play to down there. Although Metallica did play one show on a science research base there. But I tour all over the world, and I'm very fortuitous in that I get to go and see all these places that people watch on a documentary program or look at in a magazine or a book, and they're like, I want to go there one day. So for me, since I became a photographer, going out and getting to shoot these places and share these images and how I see that place through my eyes, particularly a newer place, right. It feels almost like a responsibility to me, since I'm lucky enough to go to all these places. I'm like, man, I should document this and share. And also shooting photography keeps me out of trouble on the road. But this particular image, I was on tour and we were playing out in the desert outside Albuquerque, New Mexico. And a dear friend and mentor of mine in sobriety, because I'm a sober guy, was dying back home of cancer. And I had been communicating with him, and I was supposed to go home the next day, and I was going to immediately go see him. He was on his deathbed. But I was there, and I had a Native American friend of mine who's also a photographer, Boshi, and we were discussing my friend. It was a really rough end of the tour, and I was like, let's go out in the desert and pray for his soul's peaceful passage. So we went out into the desert, and he prayed in the fashion of his people, and I prayed in my fashion for the safe passage of my buddy's soul. And it gave me a lot of peace. And then he died later that night, so I never got to say goodbye. But whenever I look at this photo, I think of trying and reaching for internal peace in a situation where I felt very helpless, So the photo gives me some peace, and it's the landscape outside Albuquerque in New Mexico is just gorgeous.
And you have, I mean, it's a beautiful image, and obviously such an impactful story, and it helps encapsulate how you document your travels, even very personal moments. And photography kind of then helps you. Would you say it helps center you in some of these moments?
Absolutely, because I process my life through the creation of art, right? That's how I understand my existence, whether it be through writing music, writing lyrics to music, writing prose, or doing photography. And oftentimes when I take a photograph, I won't even understand, because I'm an instinctual shooter, why I took it or what it means to me until I look at it later. And it's like it's a snapshot of my life at that moment of creation. That's how I come to really understand myself, because I think there's a lot of subconscious things in everyone that we oftentimes we feel some way and we don't even understand why, or we're so caught up in the moment. And for me, these photographs are they're a visual record of my emotional state. at that particular time, and my life at that time. So this photo is it's to me it's a snapshot of an important moment in my life, a very serious moment in my life.
Right.
You know.
And you have many moments like these, and we will unfortunately won't have the time to dive so deep into all of them, but there's so many, and you're so prolific, and I encourage everyone to follow your Instagram, because you are, especially when you're able to travel, and hopefully sometime soon after some positive movement in COVID times, you go to, whether it's all over the world and touring, but even showing, I think we would describe this as maybe your happy place, because you love surfing.
I love surfing. I've surfed in Asia, I've surfed in Australia, I've surfed in South America, I've surfed on both coasts in North America, and it really is a happy place for me. It's how I say I connect with the divine, with my concept of a higher power in nature. Mm-hmm. This is down in Cape Fear, North Carolina. That's the tail end of a hurricane swell. I've been surfing for 3 days straight, and the waves were still really good, but I was so tired I couldn't surf anymore, and I went up on the pier down on Oak Island, North Carolina, and shot this photo at sunset of these guys getting the last of the hurricane waves. So yeah, that's my happy place, though, man. The guys going left. That's the way I go on waves when I can, since I'm goofy footed.
Gotcha. And you have, I mean, from your happy place to, again, showing some of your travels, this is actually, I believe you said it's an image that's from a little while ago. It feels like something from now because of going on. There's kind of a cultural shift happening around face masks, where now this is becoming a very much commonplace occurrence in the U.S. Obviously, something that was prevalent in Asian countries. And we'll put a pin in this for some further images of yours that we're going to show during COVID times as well. But you have a way of capturing, whether it's street scenes or these like kind of snapshots as you put them, that can be more than, as we saw at the lead image, so much more than just a moment in time for you and just documenting your travel. But you have so many images that also encapsulate and showcase the people around you, and you have such a wide swath of talented artists and musicians in your circle as well.
Mike Muir from Suicide. That's Mike Muir from a legendary punk rock band, a hardcore punk rock band, whatever you want to call them, from Venice Beach, Dogtown, California, called Suicidal Tendencies. And that was taken on the only cruise ship I've ever been on in my life. And I only went on it because I was getting paid. We got to play on this Megadeth cruise last year. And that was a show on the deck at right about sunset. And the singer Mike, Psycho Myko, jumped into the audience. And I just thought it was kind of neat in a couple of ways. Because of the change of how so many people view shows through these phones right now, which is a bit of a remove for me. But I also like just the way the colors, you brought this up when we went through this image, the colors in the foreground kind of on that one phone just sort of match in the background. And the lighting from the stage is harsh on the left side of his face and highlights everything, And that's, I don't know, it's a moment of chaos on a cruise ship.
But it's amazing. I mean, the aesthetics of it are fantastic, and the downside of phones being in the way can be so inconvenient. But here it's kind of cool how it brings that sky color into the foreground for a pretty unique one. But my cheesy joke is that when I see this image, it makes me want a Pepsi, though.
Of course, that's all he wanted. I should have brought him one.
And she wouldn't give it to me. But you photograph all kinds of musicians, all around when you're touring, and they trust you, of course, and that's a big that plays a big role, because not many even tour photographers can get even some of the images that you have, which are pretty unique.
Right. I think it's because being in a band, most of the time when you play a show, the first the first 3 songs of your set, there's going to be everybody in the photo pit taking a bunch of photos, you know, and then they're done. And it's always a bit, it's harder to get into the show when there's all these cameras pointing at you. So if you're on stage and you look over to the side wings, either stage right or stage left where your techs are, and you see some stranger with a camera pointing at you during the show, it's kind of off-putting, because that's part of your world when you're performing, you know. That's kind of like where you go and you can recollect yourself, or if something goes wrong. So most of the time there's not a photographer there. But I lurk in the side wings all the time, because all these guys that I shoot from the stage are friends of mine, and they've gotten used to me having a camera. So when they look over and see me with a camera, they're like, oh, it's just Randy. And I get a lot of very human moments that they aren't going to show other photographers. And they know that I'm going to do my best to make them look cool as well. I'm not going to make, you know, some stupid shot that makes them look unprofessional or whatever. Right. But these 2 images are from Slayer's last world tour. We did like 4 or 5 legs of it as main support. And that's Tom Araya, Slayer's singer. And at the end of every night, because these were the last shows they're ever going to play in each city, he'd just walk out after their set, and for 5 minutes, maybe, just walk in front of the crowd and just look at everyone and just take it in. Because he's like, this is the last time I'm going to be in, you know, Chicago or whatever, playing with this legendary band. And then at the end, he'd just say, thank you, we're going to miss you. So this was him one night, I believe it was in Europe, and he's just looking out at the audience and taking it in. And it's a real moment, you know, because I saw it every night. It was emotional every single night for him.
So Randy, let me ask you, so the previous image was in color, this one's in black and white. How do you approach the scene, and how do you decide whether you're going to capture a moment in color or in black and white?
Well, it depends on what camera I have with me. If I'm shooting with a monochrome, it's automatically going to be in black. But what
makes you, let me take a step back. What makes you decide to walk out the door with a specific camera? Like, what are you looking for as you leave your, you know, with a camera set? Well,
if you look at both of these, the M10, the color one is during the day. It's right at sunset. That was a Download Festival in England. Beautiful sunset. The lights from the stage are coming up on my friend Gary Holt here, and looking at the clouds that day, and I had been there all day long. I was like, oh, it's going to be beautiful colors today, so I better shoot with that. If you look at the next image, that's an indoor gig, and it was low light, and despite the fact that the M10P has great low light functionality, the M10 monochrome is just, oof, there's something about it. So I thought that shooting that day would be better served by the M10 monochrome. Also, it depends for me if I'm really trying to look for something structurally, I prefer monochromatic images, I think. Gotcha. Like a structure for me is displayed much more prominently in a monochrome image because there's none of these colors to distract it, you know?
Right. Yeah. More details catch your eye. Whereas sometimes we get very easily distracted by color. We're engaged with color and we love what it does. And it brings me actually to the next couple of images, which are in color and have a beautiful, range and beautiful controlled color palette. But to be fair, if this one image was in black and white, or if even this next one was in black and white, or similar shoot, we'd be looking at different things. And with that being said, I do want to mention, these are further examples. You have your tour shots, your gig shots, as you put it, but then there's also these amazing images you make on tour with bandmates and with other bands that you're touring with, that you really, again, it speaks to how personal you are with them, how trusting you are with them, because they let you kind of into their soul a little bit, and these are people usually thought of as tough guys and
right,
you don't want to mess with or whatever, but we know that a lot of times they can be quite the softies, but you capture them in such amazing fashion, even out and about and touring. So
thanks.
Go ahead.
These two shots, is that what you're going to ask? Tell us about them.
Yeah, please.
These two shots are, the first one is Rainy, the bass player in Discharge, which is a legendary punk rock band that has influenced me and all the creators of the type of heavy metal I play. They helped invent speed metal. That's Rainey, the bass player, and the next guy is JJ, the singer of Discharge. And we were on a day off in England, and JJ said, hey, me and Rainey, they know I love to photograph. They're like, we should take you up to the coast of Wales. It's beautiful up there. So we spent the day driving up and on just really scenic outlooks and roads by the sea. We went to a castle and stuff. And that kind of stuff is really, really cool. And I got some great landscape shots. But my favorite kind of shots in those environments is where I see a person in that environment, you know? I just love shooting people. So that was a really good day. It was a day off on tour. And that's another thing with touring. You have to make an effort sometimes to get out and go, because most of the time you're stuck in a parking lot. So,
that was my question for you actually, is because knowing your tour schedule, how do you even find the time to get out, to explore, and to find the people you want to capture?
Coffee.
Coffee.
Coffee and adrenaline. I mean, really, I go out all the time. So sometimes I'll take, I can't do this because I'll pass up on some things because our show is extremely physical and it's exhausting. But I mean, these guys hit me up. I mean, they're legends. Do you want to go to the coast of Wales? Yes, I do. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so you must feed off of their energy and help motivate yourself with them. And you do so much, like, all the images we have to share today, everyone, we could go on for hours, and we have to just show some examples here and there. But so while we can't dive too deep into just one thing, we have a variety to show you, and that includes these portraits that you've done on tour, but then you have also a very different portrait from a different line of work that you've done. What can you tell me about this fantastic portrait of Mr. Cameron here? Cameron,
that is I got a gig acting in an upcoming TV show called Paradise City, and this young man, his name is Cameron Boyce, and he was I didn't know this because I don't watch Disney or anything, but a very famous Disney child actor. And he was cast in one of the lead roles in this TV show I got a gig in, and he was the most humble, nicest guy. I had no idea how famous he was. But he passed away at age 21. I believe he had epilepsy. I believe that was what it was. He died of a seizure in his sleep. But hanging out around him on the set he was such a good actor. Like, you could tell when you're around a really good actor, because acting's really hard and I suck at it, but he was really good at it. It was amazing to watch this guy work. And he was just the most humble guy you'd ever meet. And he has such a unique face with the freckles and his facial features and so forth. So I was like, let me take some portraits. And he was like, absolutely, and then he passed away not too long after we shot that. But such a genuine young man, did a lot of humanitarian work. His relatives set up a foundation called the Cameron Boyce Foundation that does a lot of good work. So I love his face there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful image, and it's of course incredibly tragic and saddening his loss. But it's so fantastic that you documented him in such a beautiful way. But you document and with our next image, this then takes us and shows how you're not just looking for the photographs of your friends and other people who are in the limelight, but your everyday efforts with and for those that don't know, your humanitarian efforts, your activist efforts, you are happy to highlight the average person who you come across and engage with them in a very unique way, which brings us to this lovely lady, which you can tell us the story.
Right. Well, I'm just an average person with an interesting job. That's what I always say, This woman, I had been down in North Carolina. This was in 2018, I believe. There was a bad hurricane that came through the Cape Fear region. And my friend Doug Bainton, who's actually here watching this, is a firefighter, New York disaster assistance relief team leader guy. And I got to go down and help him do some hurricane relief, kind of acted as a local liaison, helping them direct Red Cross supplies and stuff and so forth. And I'd been down there with him for a while, and I was leaving to go surfing, and in the Outer Banks, I went from Cape Fear to Outer Banks. On the way, there was this woman, we were at a gas station. She came up to me and she had an old beat up gas can. And I guess she was getting stuff for her generator, gas for her generator because power was gone. It was stuck. And she came up to me and my friend. She's like, "Can you help me with this gas can?" And I said, "Absolutely," because it was stuck. So I wound up getting the top off for her. And we just wound up having this conversation about how we were doing and talking about hair and all sorts of good stuff. We had a really good talk. And I said, "Let me take your picture. You're beautiful." She said, "Absolutely." And I shot 2 or 3 exposures with the Q. And I mean, this is probably my favorite portrait I've ever taken, I think. There's just something about it, She has such a genuine smile. And that was a pretty hard time for the people of North Carolina, the coastal people. But still, she had such a beautiful smile.
Yeah, it's an amazing portrait and even better story, to be frank. And I love that you connected with her via hair. Hey, yeah. guys out there, grow your hair long. You can have great conversations with the women in your lives. But again, we have, I love the story, but we have so many images, and this is now, we've seen a sampling of your kind of touring and being on the move, and all the lives that you capture in your photography, and these voices that you then promote and help be heard. Now, recently, of course, things have changed quite drastically with COVID times. And also all the other things going on lately, which we have a bunch of your activism and protest photos to show as well. And you've been you've just released an album amongst all of this.
Yes.
So take us through this image and we'll lead us into the next images as well.
Right. Well, we're supposed to be on tour right now. Obviously that isn't happening. It's not happening for anyone. And at the beginning of the sort of, not the beginning, because it happened before we knew about it, but at the beginning of sort of public knowledge, at the beginning of people being really cautious about the COVID situation, the streets suddenly emptied out in Richmond when people were like, "There's this thing, it's killing people." Nobody really knew what was going on or knew what to do. And the city was eerily empty. And my friend Matt, who's a photographer, and I went out at night, stayed a distance from each other, and just walked around shooting these empty streets, which normally at this time would have been full, particularly of college students around the area we went. We were walking, and I happened to see this mask just laying on the dark brick sidewalk down in front of Monroe Park in Richmond, and it just stuck out. It was dirty, face up. It was the only piece of trash on the block. Everything was empty, and I immediately just got down and shot it.
That's such a statement piece for this era right now. I mean, this image, it's a defining image, and it's interesting in that there's no one in the image, but it evokes so much emotion. And I'll have to say from Leica's side, we saw the reaction to this image was just profound, and it really hit home for us all. So I want to thank you for sharing that one with us.
Thank you for the compliment on it. Unfortunately, those masks and the gloves are all too common now. You see them everywhere. People I realize it's a tough time, but this is no excuse to just throw trash anywhere, but it's kind of become that, I suppose. So there's a feeling of, I don't know, to me, a lot of uncertainty in this photo.
Absolutely. And as not just uncertainty, unease, and again, you capture it so well. And we talked about how you choose black and white. I believe you shot this with the M10 monochrome.
Yes, absolutely.
And how the structures and details of texture really come alive when you shoot them in black and white. Now we have a series of images that you've made also fairly recently, and we talk about unease and we talk about tension. You have kind of a front row seat to maybe something that not all of us see so commonly with, the protests that have been going on around the country, but not just the protests in general, but particularly around these monuments that you see and you have in Virginia. So I'll flip through a few, but I think we have, quite a few strong ones that I'll stop on. So what can you tell us a little bit about these images you've been making going out and about during these protest times?
Well, the city has removed all but I think 2 monuments now, 2 of the major ones, the Lee Monument, and then there's AP Hill. But most of the images I've taken are around the Robert E. Lee Monument, which is the largest Confederate monument on Monument Avenue. And interestingly enough, Robert E. Lee famously did not want monuments erected after the Civil War and spoke against it. He's like, I think we should let this feelings of civil strife and unrest go away, because the Civil War is horrific. It tore the country apart. But this has become kind of a magnet, this, particularly the Robert E. Lee Monument, for protest. And what started out as protests against the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, here in Richmond, I think it's maintained a bit more momentum than in a lot of other places, because there are these monuments that were erected during the Jim Crow era. They weren't put up at the end of the Confederacy to commemorate the war. They were put up during the Jim Crow era to reinforce the power structure, the economic and political superiority of white people by putting these things up there. So as a white person who's lived in Richmond my entire life, my entire adult life, after a while, these things sort of like disappeared in the background to me. It became sort of just a part of the landscape. But I'm not looking through these through the eyes of a Black Richmonder, and you can see there's been talk a long time about giving these monuments context, because they were put up during the Jim Crow era. But now the protesters have said, okay, here's your context, and they're covered in graffiti, but there's also a lot of really cool things that go on at these monuments. There's cookouts, there's people playing basketball, there's DJs, there's dances, there's performers up there, and it's kind of become this sort of center point of this movement. And there's been a lot of beautiful things and a lot of ugly things that have happened there. So this particular image, I really liked it, because these 2 young Black kids are sitting up there high up on this monument, looking down over all these different people of different races, hanging out in solidarity, right? And they were just having a really good time. And it made me wonder, it was odd to think about it, that these kids were having such a good time on this thing erected in the service of oppression. And I suppose it's all about perspective, and it made me look at them and think, I wonder if they're going to remember this day as a really good day years from now. I don't know, it's interesting. The shape of the face of my city is changing rapidly day by day. Right. And it's incredible to see. It's fascinating to see. This is the kind of stuff I never thought I'd see when I moved here in 1989.
Well, this image also, I think it inspires some hope, right? And then you mentioned looking for humanity in moments of chaos, and you see the chaos, you see it in the graffiti, right? And I'm sure it's surrounding this moment as well. But you found that human moment, and again, it's so emotional, and it really is just like looking towards the future, that there is humanity in our future.
Right, absolutely. And this image is going to be an upcoming article in Revolver magazine that I have a photo essay in, where I've shot so many photos, and some of them we'll share real quick that show some of the strife going on. But I also really look for those quiet moments, that peace, because there are, in fact, beautiful things happening, even in the middle of all this chaos and strife and fear and uncertainty from COVID to the civil unrest. There's still, in fact, beautiful things going on. And I, as a person, have to keep my eyes open to that, and my eyes and my heart open to that, Otherwise, I'll focus only on the negative and I'll become misanthropic and depressed.
Well, no, and again, it's about that perspective and approaching it with a more positive outlook and looking for, who was it? I think it was Mr. Rogers that said, always look for the helpers, right? In moments of chaos and crisis. And here you are looking for moments of inspiration, moments of hope, moments of humanity, and moments of peace. In our chat, we're seeing that this image takes a while to take in. It's so powerful. It is a moment of hope. So it's just resonating so strongly with your audience.
Good. It just, well, it moved me, it certainly moved me seeing it. I was emotional shooting it.
Yeah, and you captured it beautifully, and for the sense of scale too. I think for those of us who we know of that monument, we are far away from it, and there's something about you don't really get a sense of how big it is.
That's a very small section of that monument. It's massive. That's a Robert E. Lee monument, people are asking. So,
but yeah, so we have more images from, you talk about the strife, and you've been there, documenting it, and being there kind of on the front lines for some of these moments. And again, talking about finding the human moments, we have another one here that you can tell us about. This, I believe, the Skate in Solidarity.
Yeah, it's a local skateboard shop called Venue Skateboards. They're in Carytown, and they put together a big session called Skate in Solidarity. I've been skating since I was a kid, and grew up in that culture. It gave me a lot of different things. It's not just pushing a skateboard down the street. There's a whole culture to it, and it's always been a place for weirdos and outcasts, and it's pretty inclusive. So the skateboard shop Venue put together this big session at one of our DIY parks in Richmond. There's several DIY concrete, like really nicely made skate parks that skaters are just like, we're going to get some money together and and this is an abandoned lot down by Texas Beach. We're going to start building stuff. We're not going to wait on the city. I believe they're working with the city now, but this started as a DIY project. I helped build one tiny piece of this years ago. But the Skate in Solidarity session was all these different skateboarders who came together to skate. And then there was a massive session there, and all different races, Black, white, Asian, Latino, everybody's hanging out doing this skateboarding thing and individually expressing themselves. That's what skateboarding is about, individual expression. And this guy is yanking inverts all day long on a pretty small board, and everybody is just watching him every time he was attempting one. But after that, everybody's session for like, I don't know, 3 hours. And then unbelievably, they managed to get everybody to stop skating there, and they skateboarded down to the Stewart Circle Monument, the Jeb Stewart Monument. And there was a skateboard session on that monument because it's got a nice bank on it. And there used to be a fence around it, but some protesters had ripped it down earlier. And I saw it in silhouette, and I saw that traffic cone on Jeb Stewart's head, and it reminded me of the title of the novel, A Confederacy of Dunces, just because it looks like a dunce cap. But it was a beautiful day. That night turned into tear gas and rubber bullets and pepper spray, though. So it's kind of cool to see it before everything went wrong.
Yeah. But and so you, in these times, and you've also, though, and occasionally will try to find some time for your happy place to kind of get away from this a little bit.
Yeah, I have to.
It's good. Mental health and your own personal well-being is very important, everyone. And you can, be Sam, to go through a few images here where you've been documenting this, though. And you have some moments of hope as well, as we've seen some examples. I love this one of the "We Still Love You, Richmond." While some businesses are having trouble with their property being damaged or things happening, you're capturing all of these moments. Some that are empowering and I'll say quite moving. Like when I see this, I want to have a positive change on things. And some, like this one, I must just comment on how you've managed to find some humor here in some ways. Right, people are here with the demanding action from City Hall, and there's this sign here.
They came to speak to our mayor, LeVar Stoney, who has been in the hot seat here for a while, and the former chief of police. I guess we're on our third chief of police since this whole thing has started in a very short time. But they came down, a bunch of protesters came to City Hall and went to speak to the mayor about the use of tear gas and pepper spray and so forth. And the mayor came out. It did not go well for him. They weren't really trying to hear it. It was not a peaceful talk exchange. But while everybody was waiting for the mayor to come out, I was shooting this crowd. I just happened to see, you see the Richmond City seal above City Hall. You see a guy on the steps, one of the organizers of the Black Power fists in the air. Then you see the system is flawed, held by a protester. And then I just thought it was funny, like kind of ironic. Right there's a detour ahead sign, like an official traffic sign. And it's like unintentional, but it's kind of telling. It's like things are changing, things are going sideways right now. And all these people being here are evidence of it,
Yeah, definitely. But again, another moment where you told me that after many protests, you managed to capture this kind of beautiful moment during some peaceful time that day.
Yeah, I've been out skateboarding all day long, about 8 hours, 6 or 8 hours all over Richmond, shooting photos of protesters and boarding up windows and all this stuff. And I came back down to where I started to get my car, and which is the 17th Street marketplace, the farmers market, which was the site of the second largest slave market in America. The first one was in New Orleans. The second was in Richmond. And we were a major port where the slaves were brought in. But I had been shooting all day long. I was tired, and I'm walking along, and I see this woman, and she's drop dead gorgeous. And she's on roller skates dancing right as the sunset. You can tell the sun is setting by the light glinting off the structure beside her and all this stuff. And she was just moving so hypnotically. And I shot several frames, not too many because then you start looking like a creep, I guess. But it struck me as I was editing this photo how significant it was that this woman is dancing so beautifully to this music that only she can hear in her earphones. She's dancing beautifully and freely on the former site of the second largest slave market in America, or who knows, maybe some of our ancestors were sold and, traded as property. It was just, I don't know, I love the shadows on it. You can tell the sun's going down, it's getting late in the day.
It's a beautiful image, and the context you bring, just like a lot of the images we saw earlier on, make it this really amazing moment. And you have a respect for history that, finds its way into your imagery. Now, we've looked at a lot of images, and we have still some really important ones here to share. So I'm going to jump ahead to everyone that's, I'm sure you have many fans here in the chat. Please sound off if you've heard the latest Lamb of God record, or if you've already bought it. Because we have, I think, something really cool and special, and that's some of the imagery, starting off with this one, that's in photos of yours that are in the album, and in terms of the LP and the CD, and in the part of the graphic design. So we'd like for you to guide us through, as like the last segment of our presentation here, the photos of the new Lamb of God album.
Right. Yeah. An interesting thing about the new Lamb of God album is there's a musical sequence, right? And that's done after you record an album, and it's for listening to hear how the songs are going to flow together. Because you wouldn't want two super fast songs going close together. There's an ebb and flow musically to an album, but there's a lyrical sequence to it, because it's a bit of a chronological album where I look at sort of what I view as is the root of a lot of the troubles in society today, moving to some hope at the end. And so the lyrical sequence is printed differently in the lyric book than it is musicals, the track listing on the back. And for each set of lyrics, I went to my band. I was like, hey, I want to use a photo or go shoot a new photo for each set of lyrics that relates to what the song is about. And they were totally cool. And it's the first time, you know, I've been able to kind of meld these two worlds that I work in, photography and music.
I'm going to jump ahead while you're saying it so people can see what that looks like in the album.
Yeah, I shot these, that's one of the vinyls today, but if you look at the lyric sheet, it's in an order, the way the images are. And you can see the images, the photographs are stylized to fit the aesthetic by our artists, to fit the overall aesthetic of the album, to unify it. But I was really excited my guys were into me doing that. So thank you, Lamb of God dudes. So if you want to go, we can go back to the images and kind of go through them real quick. This is the Federal Reserve in Richmond, Virginia. And that is the image that's used for the song Gears, which I wrote about basically the advent of mass consumer culture during the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, when they started manufacturing all these things and inventing mass marketing advertising, and sort of to instill the need in people to buy things in order to feel better, you know. So Federal Reserve has an interesting history, so that kind of fits that. It's a monetary thing.
Mm-hmm. And then we have this is Resurrection Man.
Resurrection Man. Shout out to Alan at the Leica store Boston, who gave me the title for this song. The Resurrection Men were grave robbers back in the day who stole corpses to sell to medical students. You know, so this is from Hollywood Cemetery in Richmond. The song is I wrote it from the sort of perspective as if I were the personification of supply side economics, trickle down economics, voodoo economics. So it uses some weird horror movie kind of imagery. And I took a bunch of money that I had gotten paid in cash from a different tour, took it down to Hollywood Cemetery and set it up and shot it on some different places. And this was just luck. As I was shooting this, a little breeze came along and blew this $100 bill over. So it just caught it right as it was falling. Totally lucky.
So Randy, when you're marrying your lyrics and your images, what comes first? So what is the process? You start writing and then you go out and you seek the images to fit your lyrics, or do you have an image and then the lyrics are inspired by some of the images? And I know this song was inspired by a Leica ambassador, right?
Yeah, absolutely. By Alan.
By Alan.
Yeah, so it depends. It's for this record, it's really weird because I used to say there's really no correlation between my photography and my music, but that has changed with this album. At the very beginning of the album, the concept of the album came out of a conversation with my friend Mark Twight, who's also a Leica photographer, you know, and there's a song entitled after another sort of conversation I had with him. But it depends. Like this, on this one, the lyrics came first, and I went and shot the photo. Afterwards. But some of them, the photography can come first. It's an either or.
Gotcha. And by the way, everyone, I know we may step into some overtime, so please stick with us because Randy just has so much to share, and we want to share each and every one of these images that line up with the album. So tell us about Poison Dream. Yeah,
that's a song. That song came out of a conversation with my friend Jamie Josta, who guest vocals on that song, and I realized growing that everywhere I've lived since birth has had horrific water pollution. And Jamie lives in Connecticut, and right down the street from him, there's a plant that just dumps all of this sewage into this chemical by-waste or whatever, into this water supply. And the EPA fines them, but it's more profitable for them just to pay the fine than to do anything about it. And I've seen that again and again and again in industry. So I needed an industrial shot. I went and shot down in Hopewell, Virginia, which had a really bad industrial pollution problem in the James River with this chemical ketone. This is Altria, which used to be known as Philip Morris, which is, you know, obviously a tobacco company, makes cigarettes, which I used to smoke. So I'm not being pointing fingers at anyone, but it's poison. So I needed a picture of something that produces poison, and that's a factory that produces poison. There it is, you know, snuck onto there at night.
And you know, these are some images out and about, but then you like we saw earlier with the setup shot, we have some setup shots that are, you know, this mixing of the decisive moment and the decided moment. So this one, I believe he says for On the Hook.
Yeah, it's On the Hook, which is the lyrics for that song came out of a book I read called Dope Sick, written by a Virginia author. It's about the opioid crisis and how it started with the Oxycontin being distributed in West Virginia and Western Virginia, Maryland, areas of Appalachia. So it's about the opioid crisis and how it parallels even the crack epidemic in the 1980s. So this was an empty bottle of vodka someone had given me on tour, which I suppose I drank, and I don't drink anymore, but I kept it because I was like, oh, cool, it's a skull bottle. And those are some old prescription bottles I had that I just set up in my kitchen and shot that with the Q to show the nature of the deadly nature of addiction.
Yeah, it's beautiful lighting, and then it's amazing what you've done with the Q actually as well, not just for a still life like this, but the portrait we saw earlier. You really bring a lot of flexibility and really use your cameras. And here we have a landmark, though, for the album. It's with New Colossal Hate is the song.
New Colossal Hate. That's obviously the Lincoln Memorial, and the song itself is a reworking of the New Colossus, which is a poem that's inscribed in a plaque at the base of the Statue of Liberty. You know, give me your tired, your poor, all that stuff. The song is a sort of reworking for that to show how, although we're a nation of immigrants, certain portions of our populace have become quite xenophobic, you know. And I would have gone and shot the Statue of Liberty, but you can't go there right now. And I liked Lincoln's image, you know. It kind of harkens back to an older ideal. So,
gotcha. Yeah. And you bring your perspective to in the landmark, but you know, as you've been documenting, right? You all these different activist moments, like I believe was this taken in March for Our Lives?
That was March for Our Lives, and in the album itself, I had the artist remove the gun because there's another song on the album that deals with gun violence. And I already had another picture there, so I didn't want to have two of them. But I wanted a picture that, for this song, Checkmate, which sort of questioned where we are politically currently, because I believe American politics are utterly ludicrous right now. Everything is so polarized, you know. Everything is split in half. And this guy was protesting in front of all these people were protesting in front of the United States Capitol. And I thought it was kind of interesting when he's questioning the values, you know, of what's happening currently. So, and that's what that song is about. It has nothing to do with gun violence. That's why in the album the gun is removed. But other than that, that's the root photo of it.
Yeah. Well, it's so cool to see that and kind of get a little bit of behind the scenes element of it, and kind of the inside baseball, if you will. You know, and it's great to see these images also in like their kind of original state, since it makes sense why they're changed to kind of go and coincide with the design of the liner of the lyric sheets. And now here with Memento Mori, which is a fantastic song, by the way. I'm a big fan. And just even the title. Tell us about this image that you shot with, I believe, a friend of yours that you set it up.
Yeah, that's my friend Matt Frayne. He's a professional dancer with the Richmond Ballet. And I've shot him doing some crazy dance stuff. He's a very athletic guy. So when I need a model, oftentimes, and he also photographs, I'm like, Matt, come out and do some craziness for me. But on this day, I needed someone with their heads in their hands. And the song Memento Mori deals with how we can become so insular and isolated and removed from the real world when we pay too much attention to these digital devices we all have in our pockets. Obviously, I'm not a Luddite. We're using digital technology to have this webinar right now. But for me, I wrote this song as a reminder to me to re-engage with the real world. And so I went down by the James River with my friend Matt, and I was like, I need a picture of someone in this natural setting who's not seeing anything. He's just absorbed in himself. So he sat down and modeled for me. I shot a few different locations with him, and this is the one I like the most.
Yeah, it's a beautiful image, and it struck me as we are going through, because it's also it's a bit different than your normal style, but I think that also gave an element of what made it so provoking for me as a fan of your work, both the music and your photography. But we've seen, as another with this example, because of these images you've made documenting different activist moments and protests, right? We now have one of your famous images from Standing Rock in the album as well. For which song is this one for?
For Roots. And it's a song I wrote specifically about my experience. I wrote it specifically for Native Americans. And I have a guest vocalist on it, my friend Chuck Billy, who's a Native American heavy metal singer in a band called Testament, because it's important to have a Native voice represented on that song for me. But that song is about my trip to Standing Rock and my experience there. It's very profound. And I shot this photo on Thanksgiving Day, a day that is not celebrated by many Native Americans for obvious reasons. But this place is there's a river. You can see the sort of reflection in the foreground. Well, in the middle, right beyond the woman who's staying there. These people had built this bridge over the river in the middle of the night, and this area over here where they were working on the pipeline is called Turtle Island, and there's a lot of native remains there. It was a burial ground. So all those people on the top of the hill were private security contractors or law enforcement, state police from different areas, and they all had guns. They were filming us and everything. And these people crossed the river just to come pray at this burial ground. I was shooting a lot of the people and the law enforcement praying, doing different things, shooting water cannons, all that other stuff. But I was really struck by this woman, the way she just stood there, stock still with a peace sign and that feather up in the air. I got behind her and framed it out. And I thought the way her feather and her peace signs are the objects of focus, kind of summarized what we were there for, what the whole thing was about. That's what's in focus. So
yeah, I gotta say, Randy, this is probably one of my favorite images of your portfolio, of your whole plethora of images. And I know you have many other great images from Standing Rock as well. You did so much there.
Speaking, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but speaking of these great and favorite images, I see some questions related to where do we see your images offline? Is there a possibility of a book? I know we've done a gallery show with you in our Boston gallery, but are there other plans to continue to print your images?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so hard to nail down any gallery shows right now. With everything has gone on pause, and honestly, I was talking earlier I believe with you, it's like, I need to do a book right now. I should do a photo book.
Please do.
Yeah.
Yep.
I might need some help curating. So I'm not the best with picking my own work. But yeah, I'd love to do that. That will be an undertaking for me too, because I like to write with each photo. But hopefully I'll get a photo book done soon. I'm going to have time.
You've already got a few people chiming in on the chat that to please do a book, and just in case Randy doesn't hear you guys, please feel free, share your thoughts on that chat as to how much you want him to do a book to see those images. And we only have a couple images left, but Reality Bath, another great one.
Yeah, that came from that title comes from my friend Mark Twight, who is an accomplished Leica photographer, legendary alpine mountain climber, punk rocker guy. He's a intense physical fitness trainer guy. He trains people in Hollywood. Like he trained Batman, Superwoman, Aquaman. He does that, you know. Jason Momoa, right. Shout out, another Leica photographer. But he had a first ascent in Canada that has never been repeated called the Reality Bath, because when you climb up at this gnarly thing for the first time, you get to name it. So he and this other guy named Randy did this ascent, and it's named Reality Bath. And I thought, oh, that's such a great song title. And I told him I was going to steal that. And interestingly enough, he had stole it from a punk rock album title of some obscure Canadian punk rock band. So it's kind of full circle. But the song Reality Bath deals with just like the really insane nature of our world today. We have, it starts off from the perspective of an 8-year-old girl who's going to school and she's scared of being shot, which was never a part of my reality as a child. You know, right. I think there's been a shift. And so then the second verse deals with, it's from the perspective of an old man walking through the jungle, through the Amazon, and parts of it are burnt to the ground, which are our planet's lungs. So these are two really, really crazy things. You know, kids are dying and we're burning the planet's lungs. And it's just kind of, we're so jaded and desensitized in many ways by all these horrific news stories that people get just normalized to it, myself included to a degree, and I'm trying not to be that way. So since the first part of the song deals with gun violence and the school shootings, I shot that photo at March for Our Lives, a young man, and I like the way he's sitting there amongst all the chalk, you know, with just a sign.
Yeah, it's a fantastic image and great message. And I mean, in the song, you start off by saying, "Is this the new abnormal?" This is the new abnormal, and then I believe at the end,
the end, the very last lyric is "Reject the new abnormal."
Yes,
you know,
fantastic.
We shouldn't accept children being murdered.
Yeah, and now the last one, "Bloodshot Eyes."
Yeah, that song is. I wrote that for anyone who's, I didn't write it about a specific person. I wrote it about various contentious groups of people that when you've had enough, you can just, you don't have to sit there and argue with everyone. It's like, peace out, I got to go, you know, because you have to take care of yourself. Like on the airplanes, please put on your own mask before helping others. Sometimes putting
right.
your own mask on is leaving pointless discussions. So, but I wrote that. I wrote that from the perspective of someone, I guess, who's leaving a bad relationship, whether it's a romantic relationship, a job, an abusive family member, whatever. I wrote that song and I wanted it to be for anyone who is having a hard time in a relationship of whatever sort, and they need to leave and they need to get out. And I wanted them to be able to listen to that song as they've had enough. They get in their car and they leave with their middle finger in the air, because sometimes that's the only thing left to do, you know?
Right.
So I wanted, you know, it's specific to me, but good music can people take it and apply it to their own lives and make it their own and internalize it and help them through whatever situation that they may be facing. So that's what that song is. And that song is obviously 12 South on Pea Island on the Outer Banks. It's one of my favorite places in the world. That's probably my favorite stretch of road in the world. It's so beautiful and deserted. And it's another one of my happy places. So I'm getting out. Adios. You know?
Fantastic, Randy. And again, just to show how these images are incorporated into the album. You know, I gotta say, I just as a personal note, I love this so much because I, as a, you know, fairly casual vinyl collector, you know, I look at my vinyl as my poor man's art collection. And I look at it as, you know, it's the music I care the most about. And it's how I, you know, am able to not just buy the music and have a physical copy of it, but to engage with it, to drop it down, take the time to listen to it, pick up that 12 by 12 piece of artwork that comes with it. And I love these kinds of moments where you get to see in the photography or the graphic design and just everything that goes into it. There's so much of labor of love. So it's fantastic for anyone that's a fan of Lamb of God or a fan of yours, that you can, own the album, have the music, as well as, bits of your artwork as part of it.
I think it almost symbolizes your collective self here. It's a marriage of your music, your lyrics, your photography, and your humanism. And so it's wonderful to see this album come together, and congratulations on its release.
Thank you so much.
Randy, before we close, we'd love to get your advice to up and coming photographers today. If there's one piece of advice you can leave with photographers, what would it be?
Shoot everything constantly. Shoot everything constantly. That is, I see some people. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago, and they weren't feeling very inspired. Like, I don't feel like going out and shooting today and all this other stuff. And for me, a lot of times when I just walk out the door, if I have a camera, I'm going to see something, and I stay open, shoot everything, keep an open mind. And I don't really go out with the intent to create this specific thing most of the time. I go out and see what the world has to offer. So shoot everything. Shoot. That would be my one piece of advice.
Yeah, and you heard it straight from Randy. Even if you're going to the grocery store, bring that camera along. You never know what moment might come.
Every moment counts.
Yeah. Exactly. So again, thank you, Randy. Thanks everyone for being. I know we've stepped in a little bit of overtime, but we encourage everyone to follow Randy on Instagram. It's one of the best places to see his work. Check out the new album. It's fantastic. If you're any remotely a metalhead, you're going to love it. Check out lambofgod.com. Be sure to also follow Leica Camera USA and Leica Academy USA. I just have to say thank you again to everyone who stuck with us a little extra time. And Randy, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. And thanks everybody that came and watched us, man, from around the world. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yeah. Keep in touch and take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Ciao.